I'm Edie Lush, and I'm outside the Hub Culture Pavilion in Davos, 2017. I think it's 7 years on from our first interview, Laura.
Yes.
Laura Liswood, she is the founder and Secretary General of the Council for Women World Leaders. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Edie.
Before November, I actually thought we'd come a long way in terms of how we treat gender, how we look at gender. And then I think everything changed. Do you agree with me?
I completely agree with you. I thought, for my own work and the work of women leaders, that this was going to be a really nice denouement. Sort of the 20 years on here, we now have a woman president of the United States, which of course is a question I'm always getting. Why doesn't a woman get elected?
Right.
So I thought, okay, this was really going to be the epitome. And, it would have been nice, for example, if there had been a woman appointed UN Secretary General, for example. So we could have lined up. And as it was, people were lining that up. Henry Merkel, they were lining up Christine Lagarde, Theresa May, and this was just going to be the nice next bowling pin.
Right.
Well,
well, what happened? What do you think happened? Do you think there was a lot of misogyny in the campaign?
I do believe it. I think it's hard to parse out some parts of it, but I absolutely believe that there was an enormous amount of sort of double standards, valuing things differently between the male candidate, if you will, and the female candidate. The over-scrutiny of the female candidate. Not that we haven't seen this before, but I think it was in stark contrast.
Do you think the Democrats could have done a better job in finding a woman leader, or do you think, in fact, you had to pick someone who had been a senator, who had been had experience in the White House, who had been Secretary of State? What do you think?
I do think that the woman had to, quote, be overqualified, to do this. And so what would that look like? That would look like either you'd been a governor, or you'd run as Secretary of State, or you'd been, in the White House, or you'd been a senator, all of those kinds of qualifiers that a woman would have, otherwise she would have been labeled as too inexperienced. In this case, Hillary Clinton got caught in a double bind. She was experienced and therefore part of the elite institutions. Had she been less experienced, she would have been inexperienced. So, you saw this all the time. She didn't smile enough. She smiled too much.
She sounded shrieky. I got that one on a
exactly. Her voice, her voice tones. We didn't quite see the same scrutiny levels of the, opposition candidate in this case.
So if we're going to look at ways to get rid of this gender bias, when you speak to big organizations, when you speak to people, what do you say in terms of how to start getting better at this stuff?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's a giant awareness of some of the dynamics that are going on. And really, we'll begin to see a lot more research, I think, that shows, how many times Hillary Clinton was interrupted, in a debate versus how many times, in this case, Donald Trump was interrupted, how many factual statements that weren't factual. We'll begin to start seeing some of this research. I think that kind of data are very important for people to understand the dynamics. And then it's going to have to be a conscious effort on people's parts to overcome some of what has been called the unconscious biases.
So when do you think we will see a woman in the White House?
Well, I have to tell you that at the moment, I'm cautiously pessimistic. So I'm not quite sure. I keep getting older, so my lifetime, metric might be slipping away from me. I do think, however, that what we need is more women running for the office. We need a couple of more self-indulgent female billionaires running for office.
Let's do that. What do you think about here in Davos? We know about the official numbers within the forum, but in terms of some of the groups outside the forum, we've got the female quotient down the road. There seems to be a more female place. Am I right?
I think it is in many ways, and it's a more female place for the World Economic Forum itself. I mean, since I've been coming, the numbers have gone from 6% women to about 21% women. So within the official structure, that number's increasing. And yes, there's a lot more attendant satellite activities that organizations are doing, which to me tells me that some of these corporations and others are really getting it.
Laura, thank you very much for stopping by the Hub Culture Pavilion, our annual gender conversation. It wouldn't be the same without it. Thank you very much, and I'm Edie Lush.